Sten, we're live.
And good afternoon on this Wednesday, Impeachment Day in the United States Capitol. We'll be talking about that soon. Welcome to another episode of In the Dugout. I am your host, Mike Stenhouse. Okay, as bad a year as 2021 was, I really don't feel like we're getting off to a much better start here in as 2020 was. I really don't feel like we're getting off a much better start than in 2021. Do you? I mean, it looks like we jumped from one fire right into the other. We've got hyper partisanship, we've got impeachments, we still have COVID, and we just still have a crazy leftist agenda and crazy congressional people doing their stuff. So again, we jumped from one fire right into the other. And I think that cartoon I saw pretty much sums it up. Okay, we're going to have a good, really, again, lot to talk about today. I don't know how much we'll get in an hour. I see we already have some people in our waiting room. Now, here's what's going to happen. Larry's going to let you in. You're happy to watch the show live on YouTube or in our waiting or live here on Zoom. If you'd like to participate in the call, you got to do one or two things. If you're on Zoom, and by the way, again, if you want to participate in the call, there's multiple ways to do that. You can go to rifreedom.org/talk. That's our new URL if you want to talk on the show. Or you can just phone in and use the phone number and ID. But if you are on our Zoom call, once Larry lets you in, you're going to be muted and you got to have your videos off. If you'd like to say something, either go to the participant tab and raise your hand or type a question in the chat. That way we know if you want to talk or you just want to watch. Okay, that way we don't have to click on you like we've done in the past, say, hey, do you want to say something or not? So let us know proactively, either by raising your hand or by typing a question in chat, and then Larry will bring you on. All right, so today we're going to start by talking about the what I see as a baseless impeachment. This is just, to me, this is probably just more part of the cancel culture mentality that we spoke of yesterday that seems to be sweeping this nation. That those in power, if somebody disagrees with you, we just wipe them out. We evaporate them off of social media, off of media platforms. And I think this impeachment thing takes it even a step further. It's one thing, cancel culture, that's bad enough. It's so un-American. And if we have time, we'll get into that. But this is now a search and destroy mission. They're not just looking to cancel President Trump. Well, let's face it, there's no reason to cancel the guy a day before he leaves office or the day he is leaving office. It has no practical or logical purpose other than vindictive destruction, search and destroy. I'm going to talk a little bit later how I think I think the baseless impeachment, I think they're afraid of baseless conspiracy theories that I'm going to talk to you about in a little while. We're going to talk briefly about Rhode Island's huge, massive $5.5 billion budget deficit that's projected for next year. And that despite that, the liberal left and their woke agenda, don't forget, woke just means you're, the theory we're going to say yesterday, one of our viewers, Monique, pointed out, I forgot what I even said yesterday, but I said, you're not woke, you're hypnotized. You're hypnotized into believing with blinders on only what your leaders tell you, only what your tribal leader tells you. That's not being woke, folks. But there is a woke agenda out there that's going to cost nationally, trillions of dollars, and in Rhode Island, hundreds of millions of dollars. But they don't care if there's a $500 million deficit. We gotta move forward with our woke socialist agenda. We'll talk about that a little bit. And that agenda is going to make Rhode Island even a less desirable place to raise a family or build a career. And then at the end of the show, we'll talk a little bit about the interesting press conference today between supposedly the COVID press conference that the governor has been holding regularly since this pandemic began. Today, she was joined by probably the future governor, Lieutenant Dan Comey, Lieutenant Governor Dan McKee. And a lot of jokes were going around today. This is the first time they've probably been in the same room together in 6 years, spoken to each other. But they did all the political niceties and all that was fine. But we'll have some comments on that. Tomorrow, we're going to be joined on our traditional Thursday show with Dr. Andrew Boston, and we will be talking about all things COVID. Up vaccines, treatments, anything. We'd love to have your questions. So tune in tomorrow for Dr. Boston. Oh man, what is this I see? Oh, some breaking, wait a minute. Breaking news. Wait a minute. Oh my. Oh my. Did you see that? No more pigeons. No communications allowed for Trump supporters or conservatives. Big tech just canceled pigeons. Yeah, cheap. I don't know. I just don't know. Okay. Also a reminder, little joke, right? This little joke. Also a little reminder about the cancel culture. There's a petition in Rhode Island. Hashtag abolish the cancel culture. You can send a note to Treasurer, what's his name? Seth Magaziner, to leftist socialist Aaron Regenberg, to Brandon Potter, the far left, new representative from Cranston. We'll be talking more about him later, and to other state officials. Our friends over at Gatsby Project have that set up. So go to GatsbyProject.com and you'll see the abolish the cancel culture right above, right at the top of the page. GatsbyProject.com. Sign that, send a message to these lawmakers that you disagree with their cancel culture attitude. All right, before we move on to the drive-through impeachment that's happening down there in Washington, D.C., that phrase coined today by Mark Stein, who is substituting for the cancer-stricken Rush Limbaugh. Rush usually calls it the drive-by media. Mark Stein calls what's happening in D.C. the drive-through impeachment. They're rushed. It's like fast food, fast food impeachment. They're rushed to get this out the door. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, let me go to Larry. Just check if there are anybody who's raised their hand who would like to comment. We can bring on an initial question right now. Larry, do we have anybody, or do we want to move forward?
Not yet, Stan. Let's keep moving. We have a couple people on the line, but they have not yet raised their hands.
Okay, so remember, if you're on the Zoom call with us right now, raise your hand in the participant area or type a question into the chat to everybody, and Larry will see that, and then he'll bring you on. But you're welcome to stay on the Zoom call and listen in that way. And we also welcome those over on YouTube who are watching live right now. And I see we've got a decent crowd building there. Louise says, more like brainwashed to make the global reset easier for people to swallow. I'm not sure who she was referring to, but I'm quite sure she's right. So, all right, the drive-through impeachment. I mean, let's just start with the craziness. We prepped the show. What is fueling this manic, hysterical mania all of a sudden to impeach a president who's on his way out? There can't even be a Senate hearing until the 19th or 20th. Biden sworn in on the 20th. What is this hysteria all about? And once again, I'm sorry, but our state was embarrassed today by our wonderful representative, Congressman David Cicilline. Here's what he said today. According to a news report I didn't listen to it, I didn't hear it, but according to a news report, quote, let that sink in. The terrorists who stormed this building planned to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple our government. Are you kidding me? That's your state rep, David Cicilline. the terrorists. Terrorists. Hang the vice president. Kill the speaker. And topple the government. And they get away with it because the media lets them get away with it. The hyperbole, the factual errors, the claims they can make are unlimited. Because remember, the flip side, I don't even know what we call it. We should come up with a term, Larry. We should have, type it into the YouTube right now or into the chat. What would be the opposite of cancel culture? What is the thing that anything your allies say is okay? Okay. What's the opposite of cancel culture? Cancel culture is for your enemies. What's the opposite for your co-conspirators or your friends? Type in the chat. Type in the chat on YouTube or on here on the call some ideas. And Larry, let's pick one eventually, and maybe by the end of the show we'll have a good one. Matt Gaetz. One thing I did hear on a headline of a news story today. Matt Gaetz, the representative congressman from Florida, who was overtly a Donald Trump supporter, apparently countered our representative. I don't know if it was directly to Cicilline or not, but he basically was saying, I'm paraphrasing here because I'm only going from memory. You say that Donald Trump lit the flame to incite a riot to violently overthrow our democracy. And by the way, Trump said no such thing. You can read between the lines. Anybody can do that, but you show me the words. I mean, if you call in, type in on the chat, on the YouTube comments, you tell me the words that were insightful of a riot, and we'll talk about them. All right, we'll talk about it. We're an open mind here. Lit the flame and incited a riot. And he kind of said, seriously? He goes, in the riots this summer, there were actual flames lit in buildings and cars and other property across America. At which point, it sounded like the whole Democrat side of the aisle erupted into boos and jeers and tried to shout Gaetz down. We have the left creating a mythical flame out of nowhere for Donald Trump, and the media and big tech allowing it, propagating it. And then we have actual flames, actual fires, actual private property and public property destroyed, being ignored. So if it's the cancel culture, in this case for us, what is it when the media and big tech allow David Cicilline to call American terrorists, to talk about them wanting to hang the president and kill the speaker and overthrow the government? If President Trump was inciting riots by simply saying, I understand you're going to be marching to the Capitol soon, please do so peacefully, and whatever else he says, peacefully and something else I can't remember. And what is it when David Cicilline talks about terrorists wanting to hang the vice president, kill the speaker, and topple the government? But yet President Trump is the one kicked off of social media and everything else, it seems, these days. Again, I'm looking for that term. What's the opposite of cancel culture? Type it in there. And it gets worse in our own state. Right here in Rhode Island, one of the first pieces of legislation, it's a resolution actually, but still one of the first, was introduced by this left-wing nut job out of Cranston, Brandon Potter. He introduces a resolution condemning the acts of violence and insurrection. Again, there's that word, insurrection, committed at the state of our country's democracy and calling for the removal of President Donald J. Trump. You notice that he has no other co-sponsors here. Is this partisan politics or is this unifying politics? President Trump yesterday called for a time of healing. He called today, no violence. There's rumors of violence back at the nation's capital or other state capital. No violence, he said. If you demonstrate, do so peacefully without vandalism or violence or injury. But yet we have state reps of a 1 week old rookie trying to incite more divisiveness right here. This is your David Cicilline was your United States government representative in action, and here is your Cranston state representative in action. When does the craziness end? When does the media and big tech call people out? When do we call people out? When do we do it? We can wish it upon others and to do it. Oh, we wish big tech would act fairly. Oh, we wish big media would cover the stories with real news, not fake news. What about ourselves? What about ourselves? And this past week, we have seen actions we never could have considered in America. We had physical lockdowns all last year and into this year, and now we're seeing communication lockdown. Folks, this is what they call tyranny. This is what we formed a nation to escape that from the crown. This is what freedom is. Are we going to be good Americans? Great Piece by Dennis Prager. I want to spend a few minutes talking with you about. Dennis Prager is a nationally syndicated conservative talk show host and columnist. He's got a great series of videos, PragerU. Look it up. So I'm going to paraphrase and go through this tremendous column. And by good Americans, he's not saying good as in doing the right thing. He's saying good as in, you be a good boy now, you will obey. You be a good girl, you will obey. Dennis Prager writes, what the left is doing is announcing and enforcing that conservatives don't belong in our society. And he parallels this to 1933 Nazi Germany, who also kept silent as Hitler rose to power, said atrocious things, then did atrocious things. Are Americans in 2021 as afraid of the American left as Germans in 1933 were of the German fascists? We're about to find out, he says. Prager describes how the good German is a term used to describe the average, probably decent German who did nothing overtly, proactively to hurt the Jews, but who also did nothing while atrocities were being committed right under their nose. Now, clearly, being kicked off social media, being canceled politically, compares nothing with the atrocity of Germany. But the analogy works. Are we just going to sit here and do nothing? Prager goes on. Watching Americans accept the rationale for what is obviously immoral and indefensible cancel culture, especially after the same indefensible physical and economic lockdowns we had. He said, I could have never thought this would all happen in America, but it's happening right now, folks, under our nose. The cancel culture is not about canceling. It's about tyranny. It's about the opposite of freedom. This is the lesson. We can debate Trump's words, Cicilline's words. The bigger issue at play here is freedom. It's not a trite phrase, folks. It's not a trite phrase. You see how lightningly fast, is that a word, lightning? How lightningly fast our country went from one that accepts censorship, just like that. Massive censorship. Prager goes on. He says the Capitol riots, if that's what we want to call them, are going to be used just like the Reichstag fire in Germany in 1933. There was a German consulate of some kind, or German building was burned down, and Hitler and the Nazis for years used that burning of the Reichstag as the excuse to muzzle people, to restrict their movements, to restrict their speech. And he's basically saying this Capitol Hill mob is going to be used to justify who knows what else coming our way. The Germans use it to extinguish their arch enemies, which were the Jews and the Communist Party. Big government, the left, well, the left is big government. And I even consider, Rhino as part of the left. So the left is government leftists, big tech, big media, all the advocacy groups. They're trying to use the Capitol mob scene as a way to extinguish conservative thought in this country. As we said yesterday, the enemies of debate. Now, a little more on the Capitol Hill situation. Why are they so upset? Why is Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and other left, why are they so adamant about what's going on? I mean, company after company, payment processing, or companies are refusing to process Trump campaign donations, emails are being shut down, businesses are turning away. What is this mentality, this piling on mentality that makes people jump onto a bandwagon that's immoral and wrong and goes against our nation's principles, for sure, and probably in many cases these people's own principles? What is this mentality, this groupthink, pack mentality? And once you smell blood, we all jump on, regardless of whatever foundational principles we might hold dear to ourselves. They think their strength in numbers, I call it weakness. You are a weak individual if you think somehow you gain strength through joining into a mindless pack mentality. It's clear President Trump didn't incite any violence. Sure, the protest he called for in D.C. ended up getting violent, but he did nothing to incite that. You look at the words, again, bring up the words, call in, Zoom in, chat, comment. We'll discuss them if you can find me the words that he said. So 15-yard penalty. Right here, here's my yellow flag. 15-yard penalty for piling on, mindlessly piling on. But I got a few other things. And a few of them, the last two I'm going to get to are really devious. Now, it could just be Part of the pack mentality is to be part of the ruling class. They know there's a change in administration coming, and everybody just wants to be in the good graces of the new administration. And what better way to do that than to pile on against Donald Trump? Whether you're a corporation, whether you're a big media, whether you're a senator, whether you're a U.S. congressman, whether you're this idiot lawmaker from Cranston, Brandon Potter. Now, that's a legitimate political consideration. You know, you go where the winds blow. You know, don't forget, most politicians aren't leaders, they're followers. Most politicians follow the winds. They go where the winds blow. And right now, the wind is blowing. It's the anti-Trump wind. It's the anti-conservative wind. Okay. I mean, it's a dubious and it's an immoral reason to join on, but it's a political reason. So, and I'll give it, that. There might even be, now we also are hearing about a lot of conservatives and Republicans going to say they're going to vote to impeach Trump or to convict him in the second step in the Senate, or otherwise badmouth him. There is a theory. I don't know if it's a theory, but there's stated a lot of people don't want Trump to run again. If he wants to win the Republican nomination, unless he is completely bloodied and his reputation is completely tarnished, he has a good chance of winning again if he decides to run in 2024. So maybe this effort is to completely sully his reputation so much that they could end his political career. But I got a warning. Of those, how many was it? 74 million people that voted for Trump. Most of them are pretty avid. If you overtly come out, if you're a state senator, U.S. senator, U.S. congressman, congresswoman, and you come out against Donald Trump, you might have, hoping to end his career, you might have just ended your own career. Unfortunately, we saw this happen with the Tea Party. The Tea Party caused the split in the Republican Party. No question. They put up some lousy candidates for Senate and Congress. We can't make the same mistake. You got the establishment Republicans, and now we've got the Trump Republicans. Can they come together? I don't know. On the Democrat side, you've got the Bernie Sanders Socialist Democrats, and you've got, I don't know if there's any real moderate Democrats left. There's a few, but let's just say there are. You got moderate Democrats, and you got, they've all been united in their hatred for Donald Trump. What's going to happen when he's gone? Or at least he's out of the main picture. I think that's a rift that we want to watch very closely in the coming year. It's a rift happening here in Rhode Island, but both sides, one thing for Democrats and the left, they stay together no matter how much they dislike each other. Power is what they want, not principle. You stand on principle, there's bound to be disagreements and principled fights. When you thirst for power and power only, you abandon your principles. That's the difference to the left and the right. The left has no principles in my view. Whatever will get them to power. Just take free speech. It's the liberal left, the 60s and 70s that used to scream for free speech on campuses for minority communities. It's what, kind of an ACLU thing. But now the left is for censorship. What happened to the real liberals? There is a difference between a liberal and a socialist. Socialists always use the power of government to silence their political enemies. In many ways, beyond just speech. Liberals used to be for free speech, but in their thirst for power, even they appear to have abandoned that. Let me know if you disagree. Now, I'm going to go 2 more steps further as to why this hysteria in DC. The first one is a cover your arse. I'll say it that way. I'll add an R in there. Cover your arse, CYA strategy. There's a report that came out. I read it today. In fact, let me see if I can bring it up right here. But yesterday, the FBI held a press conference. And take a look at this. This is the FBI talking. We developed intelligence a number of individuals were coming to DC to cause violence. The Capitol Police and the FBI gave advance notice to the Capitol Police. And apparently they did little, if nothing, about it. Why? I don't know. It's a good question. I have no idea. The chief prosecutor said he's pursuing conspiracy charges. Conspiracy. So there are two critical questions and points to be made from this. It's unclear if Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, Chuck Schumer, Mitch McConnell, leaders in the Senate, were also aware, had advance notice of this potential violence that was being planned. I'm going to come back to that word planned in a minute. Conspiracy, advanced planning. The first and most obvious point here is that if Schumer, McConnell, Pelosi knew and did nothing, how do they hide their incompetence, their negligence? By blaming Trump, by peddling a false conspiracy theory on Donald Trump to cover their own arses. My theory, I don't know. No one's saying for sure if McConnell, but it's as valid a theory as anything else. The second thing here, and even more important, the whole basis for Trump's current impeachment, this ridiculous drive-by impeachment, is that Trump incited the violence. But as we see in this article, how could Trump incite an attack that had already been pre-planned, pre-conspired, and was in motion before his speech ended? So did Trump incite the violence, or was this a pre-planned conspiracy, taking advantage of the protest that Trump called for? Now, there was another thing. It was in motion before his speech ended. Timeline shows that the first assaults on the Capitol, the first pushing on the barriers against the Capitol, happened 20 minutes before Trump's speech even ended. How could he have incited violence that was already happening while he was talking? And you don't walk from the ellipse where he gave the speech to Congress in 2 minutes. I mean, many people say it's probably, even on a good day, it's a 20, 30-minute walk, maybe 45, given all the barriers and the crowds. But yet they're still claiming this was Trump lighting the fire of violence. So you don't hear this from the left media. You don't hear this anywhere else. This is important stuff. So, but I want to go back to the first point. The second point is more about Trump's impeachment. The first point is why they're so hysterical about this. It looks like to me they could be trying to shift blame from themselves for their negligence, their ignorance, their malfeasance, and not heeding the warnings that law enforcement, the FBI, the New York police gave them about potential violence at their own chambers. And they're trying to now blame it on Trump. And hopefully it gets swept under the rug. That's possible. Here's the ultimate one. And this one is out there. But it could also explain this hysterical mania that's sweeping the capital city in Washington to try to sully President Trump on his way out the door. This hysteria is not the actions of just your typical political activity like we showed before, that we talked about before. You know, do they want to pile on? Do they want to be part of the ruling class? Do they want to kind of purge Trump and end his political career and sully him? Even covering their own butts, their CYAs, to me doesn't fully explain the absolute hysteria you hear from Nancy Pelosi and others. Why? Now, Nancy Pelosi had her laptop stolen during the intrusion, during the riot at the Capitol. These hysterical comments are the comments of somebody who are afraid of something. They're afraid very much of something. Is it something on her laptop? Is it something else? That something else may be something that's also baseless, but has permeated. I know it's out there. I have been watching, just because in the 1% offshot that something ends up to be true, I'd like to be up to speed on it so I can talk to you about it with some knowledge. There are all kinds of conspiracy theories out there about Trump having his final Trump card. Purposely, but that's the term to use a pun, that Trump still has 7 days to use the ultimate Trump card. And that's to declassify everything, to sign the Insurrection Act, and to implement some kind of martial law or military tribunal that will actually conduct all the hearings that the Supreme Courts, the federal courts, and the state courts, and the legislatures at the states, and the legislatures and Congress failed to have. And it goes beyond, the theory goes beyond just the election. It gets into all kinds of stuff, decades old. If they really believe that's a possibility, they need to muzzle him. So that one's a way out there theory. But again, I'll just share it with you. Nobody else in the media will talk to you about it. I don't believe it. I told you this mythical Trump card is as baseless to me as the premise for them impeaching him. But if they believe it, if they believe these myths, it could explain their actions. All right, let's move on. Let's go to Rhode Island. All right. Again, more disturbing news. It just doesn't end. So RIPEC, the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, very well respected, kind of an insider group, but they're really good with numbers and budgets, and they analyze the budget and do all kinds of reporting and analysis on the budget. So just yesterday, I believe, was the date they put out a budget that that showed Rhode Island is going to be facing over a $500 million potential deficit for next year. How do we balance the budget? You got really only one or two things you can do. You've got some spending, got some social services, or you can tax us to death. Try to raise money some other way. They're not going to get the same federal money they got last year. Well, who knows? Under Biden, who knows, right? Maybe that's the answer. Under Biden, they could get just money thrown at the states. Use it whatever you want. That's definitely a better bet than it was under Trump. But what it probably means for you, the car tax phase out, that's going to stop. It's going to be halted. I don't know if it's going to be reversed. We're all hoping to see, was it 2 more years to go? We're hoping to see the end of those damn car taxes. But they say right there in the report, the continued phase out of the car tax does not appear to be affordable. So you got that going for you. But do you think any of that slows down the progressive left, the socialist, woke socialists out there? No, just take a look at this today in the Providence Journal. Progressive Advocacy Group has ambitious agenda. Not sure how well you can see that, but they're talking about raising income taxes. They're talking about putting the first ever state basically a sales tax on an additional on the sale of upper end homes, medium to upper end homes. Of course, they want to legalize marijuana to bring in that money, which destroys our society, but who cares? It brings in money. There is one thing we do agree with, is ending corporate welfare. One thing we in the left have been on the same page on for many years. Let's stop giving these corporate insider cronies, these big rich companies, just handouts to say that we're bringing new jobs and industry to the state. Or all we're doing is giving insiders a bunch of money. So this is a group that's part of a regional, it's the Rhode Island arm of a regional coalition. Renew Rhode Island is part of Renew New England. Unions are involved in it. The political cooperative, I think that's, what's his name? I can't think of the guy's name. The guy who ran for governor, he's part of that. Even the Rhode Island Interfaith Coalition, which is anything but a religious group, but they try to make it seem that way. And they call this the Rescue Rhode Island Package. Are you kidding me? With a $500 million projected deficit, they want to raise even more money to advance green agendas, affordable housing, and whatnot. These are just some of the bullet points, which cost hundreds more millions of dollars for our state. As we said yesterday, no matter what happens, whether we need a cancel culture to help us, the liberal left progressive socialist agenda must move forward. No matter how much it hurts our state, no matter how much it costs money, we don't have. We don't have it. $500 million deficit. Energy efficient, affordable apartments. Do you understand what an oxymoron that is? If you're putting in all these high expensive green solar panels or wind driven panels, that's expensive. That stuff is not, I mean, listen, we'd love to have solar energy, wind energy, but if we need to find an expensive and usable way to have it, it's not there yet. And of course, dismantle the petroleum industry down the bottom there. Now, we also already know they want to raise your gas taxes from this TCI, this Transportation Climate Initiative. That will raise, they actively and openly say we want to punish you for using your vehicle. So here's an interesting question. We just had COVID-19 lockdowns for medical reasons. Is it that hard to think now with what's going on that we're going to have climate change lockdown soon? No driving your car for 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get over the hump. We want to reduce carbon emissions for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks will turn into 2 years. And then forever. Is it really that unthinkable that we'll have climate change lockdown soon? With some of the crazy ideas put forth? Folks, we're heading a bad place. Don't know how long our show's going to be on. We're not going to say anything insightful, but we're going to push back against that socialist progressive agenda. That's for damn sure. Now, we've only got a few minutes left. Larry, do we have, before I go into the governor and the new governor, anybody we should talk to?
We have two people in the on the Zoom call, but they haven't raised their hands yet. So
All right, if you're on the Zoom call and you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, either raise your hand or type, probably better yet, type your question just briefly into the chat so Larry knows that you want to actually participate rather than just listen. Thank you, Republican RJL. Does everyone remember when the Center for Freedom and Prosperity fought to kill Roadmap RI? Right. Roadmap Rhode Island, if you remember, was a plan pushed forward by Obama's Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, which basically said we're going to build affordable housing in almost every neighborhood in America. We don't care if you've invested hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in your home. We're going to put an affordable housing complex in your neighborhood. And for opposing that, they tried to cancel us years ago. It didn't take back then. This was 2012, 2013, if I'm remembering. For opposing affordable housing units being placed in virtually every neighborhood around, of course, we were called racist. They tried to cancel us way back. Now, it didn't ignite the fire. There wasn't social media quite as much. We didn't have the viral stuff going on. But they tried to cancel us. There's no doubt about it. Okay. Final segment. Governor Raimondo, Governor McKee. Gina Raimondo, current governor, soon likely to be U.S. Commerce Secretary. And again, if you're not aware of that, go to rifreedom.org, and one of the top entries on the top left there is our analysis of why Gina Raimondo as Commerce Secretary is a downgrade for America, but an upgrade for Rhode Island. It's a good piece. We factually list a whole bunch of bullet points. I don't know if she's going to get any pushback in the commerce hearings. If anybody is interested in that, it's one of the reasons we put that media release out, so that anybody in DC that didn't want to bring in pretty much someone who's taken a socialist view of economics as our United States Commerce Secretary, that info's out there. So rifreedom.org. And then Dan McKee, the soon-to-be governor. They both appeared at a press conference today, presumably for the weekly COVID update, but it was also a chance for Raimondo to make some comments about her Commerce Secretary nomination, and then for McKee to make some initial comments. Raimondo refused to take questions. She's obviously following the Joe Biden playbook. When you don't have anything popular to say as little as you can, hide in your basement, and don't answer any questions. And Gina Raimondo hasn't answered questions, I don't believe, in over 3 weeks, if I read a tweet properly today. Dan McKee did speak shortly and briefly. Apparently did take a few questions outside, but not at the well, I guess it wasn't a press conference if they weren't taking money questions. All right, so what did Raimondo say? I had to laugh right off the bat. I'm sorry. Listen, I don't know what's in her heart and in her mind, but it certainly goes against what everybody in Rhode Island has been saying for 4 years. She said she never pictured herself living and working in Washington. Maybe that's true, but certainly not the narrative that's been out there. And I had to laugh because we all know she wanted to go 4 years ago if Hillary Clinton had won. That's the narrative. Again, I can't speak for her, so I have to qualify that a little. But of course, she threw in the obligatory buzzwords and why it's so important. Of course, she stressed many times the worst economy our nation's ever seen, as if it was, again, without saying the word, as if it was Donald Trump's fault, as if there has been no pandemic. Didn't even mention the pandemic. How are you, U.S. Commerce Secretary, with your key finger on the pulse of our economy, and not even recognize that we're dealing with a pandemic here that's stifling economic activity in so many states, not because of any federal mandates, but because of state-imposed mandates like her own. She doesn't mention, well, it's governors like me, blue state governors like me, that have caused our United States economy to go through one of its worst spells in our history. I mean, it's insane. How did Governor Raimondo, you, California Newsom, Illinois, what's his name, Pretzker or Pretzel or whatever the hell his name is out there, New Jersey, New York, Cuomo. It's you guys that impose these indefensible lockdowns that didn't work, especially in Rhode Island. My goodness. You know, we locked down supposedly to reduce spread. Rhode Island has one of the highest spread rates in the world and one of the worst economies in the world when it comes to job losses and gross domestic product. And Gina Raimondo wants you to think that it's Donald Trump's fault. Donald Trump didn't mandate anybody shut down. We all understood back in March and April that we had to do some things for a while, so he was okay with states determining what level of shutdown they're going to do. But since then, since the summer, he's been talking about opening up. And it's worked in Florida, and it's worked in many places. Florida is no worse off than any other state. California, which had lockdown after lockdown after lockdown after lockdown, and still, I just talked to a buddy of mine in California. It's unbelievable what they can't do out there. And their rate of spread is as high as any place else in the country. The lockdowns don't work. And of course, Governor Raimondo went on to talk about how we must have an inclusive economy. That right away sounds nice, politically correct, woke. It's woke, but it's economic disaster. You can't force it. You can't prefer some people over other people. It's not how it works. It's not how an effective economy works. Then she went on and stressed more big government solutions. She talked about how in Rhode Island, she credits Rhode Island's job recovery before the pandemic, and even during the pandemic, rising out of it, on spending on training people into new jobs. Message to the governor and future commerce secretary: you don't need to train people into new jobs if you take the boot off the back of the economy and let people have their old jobs back. Corporate training for new jobs at a national level will cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Just spend more money. And guess what? That money goes to the largest insider firms out there. We talked yesterday about corporate socialism. There you go again. Just another excuse to give more money to their big corporate allies. Now, one mention by the Commerce Secretary, soon to be, of the United States, of reducing regulations, reducing taxes, making it easier to do business in the United States. Not one mention. Just your typical big government, political correct bullcrap. What about Dan McKee? He made a few comments that I didn't see any of his interviews afterwards. He gave his, no, listen, he's certainly going to be an upgrade to Gina Raimondo. He's certainly not a communist or socialist like Gina Raimondo has become. At least I don't think. The question will be whether he can stand up to the socialists in our state, dominate the Senate, and are dominating now the House in our state. That'll be interesting. He said, I believe I saw in a tweet after, he said he's hoping to have time to put his mark on the budget, which isn't going to be submitted, I don't think, till March now. We'll see what that looks like. But he gave the perfunctory and obligatory political niceties about Gina Raimondo and the great job she did, and congratulating her, and how what a moment of pride it is for Rhode Island to have our governor serve on a U.S. president's cabinet. And that part of it's true. He then pledged to keep Raimondo's failed COVID task force totally intact. Like we just said, that's a failed COVID task force. We didn't stop the spread, and we crushed our economy. Almost as bad as, if not worse than every other state in the nation. That's a failed COVID task force, but out of political nicety, Dan McKee's promised to keep it fully intact. So we got that to look forward to. Dan McKee did recognize the plight of small businesses. He talks about small businesses and helping them often. If you're really, I don't know, is he going to help them thinking just throwing money at them? That's not helping them. That's a Band-Aid. The way you help them is reduce we have the worst business climate in America. I've never heard Gina Raimondo talk about it. We'll see if Dan McKee talks about it. That's his issue. He really wants to help small business. Don't give them a crutch. Give us a more fertile environment in which small business entrepreneurs and investors can grow their own business in their own way. That's how America works. We'll see. I expect Dan McKee will be an improvement. I don't know how much. And then the final item today, and here's an offer that we'll all get a laugh at, but I'm half serious. It's a big debate over how the next lieutenant governor gets picked. McKee said today, well, I'll wait and see what the General Assembly tells me the law says. Wrong. The General Assembly, of course, will want the power to appoint a lieutenant governor. But the law and the Constitution says the governor gets to appoint one. Apparently it happened in 1997 that way. So in fact, we'll probably make that a point of a show in the future, get some of our lawyers on. But I saw Joe Larissa put out a tweet right before the show that said this is already settled. The governor gets to appoint it. So having said that, there's a lot of people clamoring now to be lieutenant governor. A lot of people. And of course, the left says, well, just to be politically correct, qualified or not, we should just pick a woman. I mean, you understand how crazy that is. We need a qualified person who's going to work in concert with the governor. And if this governor has the courage to stand up to the progressive left agenda and he needs some help in doing that, then pick me. Pick me. I'll help you defeat the progressive left anti-business agenda. And I'll promise not to be partisan about it. We'll see if this governor really is going to do anything to help. Now, of course, I'm just joking. The last thing I would ever do is run for or be in political office. Ever. I like what I'm doing just fine. That makes the point, though, right? Your pick, his pick, will say a lot about what his goal. If he's really, he's talked small, but I'm going to give him credit for talking. He's going to have a budget and then a legislative session, and we'll see if he backs that talk up with appropriate action. Minimum wage, TCI gas tax, equal pay legislation, all these things could kill businesses. Or is he going to do something to create more fertile business environment in the state? Will he pick someone as his lieutenant governor who will help him get there? That's what I encourage him to do. And if it means picking a conservative, if it means picking a Republican, wow. What a great symbolic gesture that would be to say enough of this. Enough of this wacko, progressive socialist agenda for Rhode Island. Enough of that. Ironic. This is the headline in the Providence Journal today, the day that future, soon to be Governor Dan McKee makes his first statements. Is he going to fight against this? Or is the madness in our state going to continue? Is he just going to put another mindless, woke leftist with blinders on in the lieutenant governor position? Or is he going to put someone there who's really going to help him help small businesses? We shall see. And if it has to be me, I won't serve. Just kidding. All right. Hey, thank you for joining in today. Always a good discussion. Tomorrow, Dr. Andrew Bostom will be on to talk all things COVID after a little intro. So probably from about 4:20 on, we'll have Dr. Bostom. I'll cover whatever the news of the day is tomorrow in the opening part. But we look forward to your questions and comments on the tomorrow with Dr. Bostom.